Hey, I'm Lucy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of Add Psalt. So Add Psalt is on a mission to diversify UK retail. We essentially work with brands from underrepresented areas in society. So currently we're focused on Black-owned brands, and we essentially work to reshape, relaunch those brands and get them both retailer and also investor ready. And one of the key reasons we did that, it all sort of came about roughly a year ago. I was moving into the world of consulting. I've got 20 years of brand and innovation experience, working at the likes of Nestle, Kellogg's, McVitie's, Danone. So I've been around, I've been to quite a few places. But Sam, my co-founder, he's also had big sales strategy roles, working at Nestle. He's now the MD of Innocent, Mars General Mills as well. We've known each other for a while. We were talking a bit around, there was quite a few Black-owned brands approaching Sam through the work that he was doing. He started sending them my way, and we were working through sort of how could we help these guys and girls, how could we help the different brands. And to be honest, it just sort of organically happened. The more we looked into it, the more we realised that there is this cohort of amazing talent, amazing brand, amazing ideas, but there's this gap between getting into retail, having a really sharp proposition, certainly having sort of, how would you say, the knowledge, the expertise, the network as well to get you into retail and also get in front of investors. And that's essentially what we do, and that's the gap that we fill. We almost sort of take great ideas, great entrepreneurs, and bridge them to get them both investor and retail ready. So there's a lot of rigor actually that goes into screening them. And certainly in this last cohort, we had close to 100 brands actually apply. So it's getting bigger and bigger and growing. So the rigor that we need to put the brands through is sort of quite thorough. So we look at feasibility, capability and desirability. So those are the three different factors. So in regards to desirability, at the end of the day, we want to present brands to retailers and get them into retail if they're actually a desirable innovation and a desirable idea, right? Like there's no point putting a brand or an innovation and trying to present that to a retailer, or even a retailer putting it on shelf just because they're from a certain sort of minority background or they're Black-owned. At the end of the day, consumers are colourblind. They don't care. If it's not going to be a good idea or if it's not on trend, then certainly it's not going to make it. So that's the first one. The second one really is capability as well. So we shortlist the brands, and then the brands that we think are sort of quite interesting ideas and on trend. We actually do a couple of interviews, a series of interviews with the entrepreneurs as well. Something that we've certainly, I suppose, learnt, and especially when it comes to not only speaking to buyers, retailers, but also investors, is the entrepreneur behind the idea is just as important as the idea. Like you could have the gold nugget of an idea, but if you don't have an entrepreneur that's got that fire in their belly, they've got that drive, and they're going to really, really carry it through, then, as I said, the idea is as good as the entrepreneur that sort of carries it. So having a really driven, probably flexible, but ambitious entrepreneur as well is also really important. And the last, I suppose, element is we take brands on that they're not kitchen sink. So they're not sort of, you know what I mean, like still being made in a kitchen, or they're sort of, we're not quite sure. So they're brands that have actually launched to some extent. They've got to have a manufactured product. And the key reason for that is to go from something you're making in the kitchen to sort of getting into retail. That's a really, really long process. We work with brands over 15 weeks. But then also if the entrepreneur has actually somehow got it to being manufactured, prototype and manufactured, I think it shows probably a lot about the grit, but then also it's proven the success not only of the idea, but probably the ambition and capability of the entrepreneur as well. So those are the three key areas: feasibility, desirability, and capability. But lastly as well, we're actually very, very lucky to be working with IRI, who, when we actually do look at the different brands and the different ideas and what's coming through, we put it through a little bit of a filter as well. So IRI help us to understand what are some of the key trends happening sort of within the market, what's growing, what categories are growing, which aren't growing so much. And that helps us as well in regards to making making the decisions. So when you come onto the Add Psalt program, it's a fun program. So like, honestly, we have a lot of fun, but it is really a roll up your sleeves. It can be a bit of like a, how would you say, deer in a headlight. There's a few of those moments sort of along the way, but to be honest, for everyone involved as well. So the program is run over 15 weeks and we put it into sort of 3 different stages. So there is the concept or sort of brand evolution stage. There's a stage where there is sort of more trainings, and then there's a stage at the end where we actually get them investor ready. Starting from the start, the first step is we see a kickoff. That's very fun, introduce everyone. But from there, we do a brand review. So we do this for each of the brands. So we do a deep dive, what's working, what's not, what are the opportunity areas. So what are the triggers and barriers for consumption, essentially, for each of the brands. From there, we actually build, we've got a process, but we customize it a bit based on what the brand challenges are. The first stage is, or sort of the next stage is then actually a positioning workshop. So from there we get a range of different consultants in, we get a brand strategist from our agency partner, strategy agency partner and design partner, The Cabinet, along with we sort of handpick who the advisors are going to be in the workshop based on what the brand is and based on what the needs are. There's an output of that. We start to shape the positioning. We share it with a range of different brand advisors. So again, these are customized pending on what the brand is. So for example, at the moment we have a rum brand, Live Rum, going through the program. So that entrepreneur has been speaking to the likes of people at the spirits area in Heineken, Diageo. So you sort of get what I mean. It's really based on what the brand is. But really from there, so we start to really reshape the brands, reshape the positioning. We do a full sort of aesthetic overhaul, brand and aesthetic overhaul based on what the output of this is with our agency partner, The Cabinet, who are amazing, like absolutely amazing. And then from there, we start to share it with the retailers. So we have, very, very luckily, we've got 4 of the biggest retailers in the UK actually working with us hand in hand. So Tesco, Sainsbury's, Waitrose and Ocado's. And there is 2 check-ins for each of the brands as we go through this 15-week program. So one at the beginning where they check in, they share the, how would you say, the rough sort of positioning and sort of the first starter for the packaging, what it looks like. We get feedback from them. And then we share it right at the end as well, which is almost, I suppose, as close to a sell-in as you possibly could be with the retailer. So that's, I suppose, quite exciting and sort of quite different for the program. The next stage of the program, though, is now that we've got the positioning, we're sort of working on what's that going to look like. We're working on the packaging. We do a series of different trainings. So we work with IRI. They are absolutely amazing. They give full category data, retail data for each of the different brands that are on the program. And they also hold a session around how to think category. This is actually an open session to the full Add Psalt community, so multiple people can come. But they really, I suppose, teach people the fundamentals of category management and really thinking about category and trying to sort of think the way that a buyer would think about a product versus just, here's a product, here's an idea, like how is it going to build my category, how is it going to build incremental revenue into my category, all of those elements. Other trainings we do as well, there is a communications training, which is amazing, so actually teaching brands how to communicate, how to present, how to storytell, which is so important. We've got social media. Sainsbury's do speak to a buyer, which is pretty cool as well, another open session where different people can come along and just ask a buyer what they want, what they don't like. So that's really, really good. But then also we do finance training. We work with young foodies to get a bit of a MOT as to what we need to do from a manufacturing, supply chain, regulatory side, which is almost like a tick, 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 what those things are that brands need to look for. But yeah, there's a wide range of training sort of within that. One of the key things though also is we work with the brands to take the IRI data, and build really strong category-focused commercial stories. So everything we do along the way for Add Psalt, it's sort of a 15-week program where it almost like builds each element. It's almost like building a little, I don't know, house or something. Like each bit sort of builds on top of each other. So we work with IRI to get the category data. We then build a really strong category commercial story. And then in the second retailer check-in, that's actually what we share. So what you can see, and certainly, I mean, the retailers have said it, different brand advisors who have checked in with the brands at the beginning of the program to the end of the program, it's like night and day. So you start with a brand that it's in market, is it doing so well? I'm not quite sure, to completely sharpening it, repositioning it, overhauling its aesthetic, making sure it's got really, really sharp elbows and it's got a really strong category focus and story, and then presenting it to the buyers at the end of the program. In a way, as I said, it's not a proper sell-in by no means, and that's absolutely fine, but it's as close to it as you possibly could get. The very, very last stage as well, once we do all of those things, there's quite a lot, is so we've got a great product, hopefully we might have some buyer interest, but again, one of the other key areas and challenges is if you don't have investment and you don't have the money to actually go and build this brand and get the first lot of stock and pay for that, then you can't get it into retail. So we then work with Realise Capital, who are another, I suppose, key partner of the program. And we not only get the brands retailer ready, but we actually get them investor ready as well. So again, we do trainings on what investors are looking for, how to build proper investor stories, working through the commercials, again, how to shape, I suppose, a retailer proposition more into like an investor proposition. And last, but certainly not least, because it's really important, we do an investor event, which is the very last day and sort of almost the grand finale of the whole program. And we present the brands to investors, and that's I suppose, the start and the kickoff of their fundraising round. So from a personal development side of things, this probably is something that when we designed the program, if I'm honest, we sort of didn't overlook, but didn't think through. It's not just about the technical evolving a brand and shaping a proposition and then getting it in front of retailers, right? There's this whole sort of personal growth journey that each of the entrepreneurs go on. And from the beginning, from when we first meet them to when they're in front of not only the retailers, but the investors, honestly, it's like, it's night and day. Like, it sounds a bit cringy, but it's like a Cinderella story type thing, which is one of the things that is so amazing. But then also, depending on the brand and the background, and there's different things that sort of pop up along the way. So we've had entrepreneurs that, amazing personalities, amazing ideas, but then sort of, when they're pulling together either like financials or really trying to like sharpen an idea, they're just not quite there. So there's sort of different ways that you've got to work with the different brands. There's been entrepreneurs where they've got an amazing brand, but then we can see that their story and their background is almost like the cherry on top that would make that brand so sharp and so different. But then the entrepreneur doesn't really like talking about themselves so much. So I suppose we've got to sort of, coach them and show them that, the best way that they're going to make their brand sharp and relevant and interesting, but then also just so differentiated in the market, is really sort of bringing through stories. So certainly, depending on who the entrepreneur is, there's different sort of challenges along the way. But the personal development and making sure that we're working hand in hand, not only, teaching people how to like write category stories, but actually being there. And there's sort of that personal side to it, obviously, as well. Making sure that because for everyone, myself included, as I said, there's been a few like deer in the headlight moments where you're like, shit, like we've got to do X, Y, Z within a week, we're a little bit behind, how are we going to pull this together, right? So there's always a lot of those moments, but I suppose it's just making sure that everyone knows we're in it together, we're sort of coaching different people through it, but then also identifying the unique, opportunity or sort of challenge areas for each of the different brands. That's been really important. So Sam actually, in another life, he's actually a coach, and as part of the Psalt group, they do a lot of coaching for, I suppose, different people. So coaching actually is something that wasn't originally in the program when we wrote it, but just based on what we saw in the first cohort, we've added it in, and it's worked really, really well. So that's a key part of it. So it's certainly, there's a technical side to Add Psalt, but there's really, I suppose, the personal side there as well. There's been some pretty hilarious things that have been happening. So, oh God, I can remember. So there was one of the guys from last time, I won't name names, was presenting his updated, so his category strategy, his repositioned brand. You know, we've spent like weeks like writing this. He's presenting to 5 Tesco buyers. And then sort of halfway through, his mum pops in with a cup of tea and gives him a kiss, you know, and he's like, cheers, mum. And you've got these 5, you know, buyers who are usually, you know, used to speaking to, you know, like, you know, corporate from sort of big FMCG and Nestle's of the world style buyers. But they loved it. Like, it's hilarious. And it's, how'd you say, it's just, I don't know, honest and like just fun. And there's so much of that sort of that goes on though as well. One of the key things though that I like, and as I said, it's the before and the after. And because you're working with the entrepreneurs, you sort of see it sort of day by day, right? It's sort of almost trying to watch grass grow. You know what I mean? You don't see it grow, but it certainly sort of will grow. But it's the feedback that we have, certainly from the buyers, certainly from the advisors, but then also after the program, seeing them sort of pick up and continue taking the work that you've done and go with it. And we've seen that through the investments, I suppose, opportunities that have come to the brands from the first cohort, and certainly some of the buyers contacting the brands directly, like bypassing us saying, when can we launch your product in our stores next year? Yeah, it's been amazing. So we have a range of different, key partners on the program. IRI are a very key partner. We're very, very lucky to be working with them. So they provide tens of thousands of pounds worth of relevant, up-to-date category data. So the latest, I suppose, retail scan data, IRI data, and we work with them to use that data to shape category relevant stories for each of the different brands. But then they also hold this wider how to think category session for our wider Add Psalt community, which we had feedback from last time was one of the best trainings that a lot of entrepreneurs had been to, really thinking about how a retailer thinks and how to approach, I suppose, commercial propositions with more of a category lens. So IRI, so lucky to have them. Another one of our major, I suppose, supporters is the Cabinet. So the Cabinet are a strategy and design agency. They've been partnered with us from the beginning. So they do work which it would, as I said, like they're an absolute top class agency, so would cost a lot, but they actually, I suppose, donate their time to the program. And each of the program, they work with each 3 brands. They sit in on the brand positioning and strategy sessions, and then they take that away and we brief into them like we were, like a Nestle briefing into, into a design agency or a, communication agency. We brief into them, and they work to do a full brand aesthetic, brand packaging, and design, I suppose, evolution. Their work is like top class. Like they work with Diageo's, Coca-Cola's. So like they're an amazing agency, and they do this pro bono. They donate the time, which is absolutely amazing. And the feedback that we've had from the packaging last time, it's make or break stuff. And I personally loved the work last time, and we've just briefed into them. So I'm so excited to see what's going to come sort of in the next round as well. One of our other major partners is Young Foodies. So we work with young foodies, and they donate their time as well to help the different brands sort of think about, the fundamentals of, I suppose, the regulatory, the legal, the manufacturing, all of those different elements, almost like the reality check to take a brand and get it into retail and, what actually is needed. We hold a session with them that we call an MOT. a real rabbit in the headlight, sort of deer in the headlight session as well, but it's absolutely amazing. And again, if you were starting a brand and just, fumbling your way through, there's a lot of areas that you would probably get into quite a bit of sort of trouble if you didn't know all these things. So they're absolutely amazing. So one of our other major, I suppose, partners and supporters is Realise Capital. So Richard from Realise Capital, again, he's been with us from the beginning. He's absolutely amazing, and he helps the brands and works with them sort of hand in hand to get investor ready, which having some money to actually get your brands up and running, it's a very, very big part. So Richard works with the brands. He holds a session to go through what do investors look for, not only in regards to, I suppose, brand and idea, but personality, style, how to present the commercials. And then he actually works with the brands as well to help create their documents, help create their pitch stories. And we hold like a range of different pitch practice sessions so the brands can practice. And then he helps us organise the investor pitch day right at the end as well. So yeah, very, very lucky to have him and work with him. One of the key reasons that Add Psalt has had so much success to date and is continuing to go from strength to strength is the fact that we work with some of the UK's biggest retailers. So we have Tesco, Sainsbury's, Ocado and Waitrose working with us hand in hand and giving us the support and certainly using their teams to help shape the brands. So the way that works, we do 2 different retailer check-ins, one at the beginning of the program, where the different brands speak to different category buyers, depending on what category the brands sit in, to get feedback on the brand. And then at the end of the program, they properly present their brand to the specific buyer. It's not a specific retailer selling, but it's as close to it probably as you can get. So in the last program, across the 4 retailers, we had, I think it was 36 different buyers across 4 of the different retailers actively inputting in to the program to help shape, I suppose, what they wanted and what they were looking for in brands. And the output, to be honest, it speaks for itself. So we had 8 indicative listings come out of the last program. And again, this is, the intention of the program certainly isn't to, present to retailers and like we don't guarantee listings or anything like that. It's more to get them ready to then go away and, I suppose, share. So we were absolutely delighted and, continue to work with the retailers. So we are close to halfway through the second cohort, and it is, it's been really, really exciting. It's actually a full female lineup of founders and co-founders this time, which we didn't actually plan. It just happened to be that the females had the best capability, feasibility and desirability of all the brands that actually entered. But personally, what I think is just so amazing is the fact that females are still underrepresented, I think within retail and within many different areas also. So it's almost like I suppose, a tick as well, which is so exciting. So this time we've taken 3 brands on as well, and we've got 3 different I suppose categories, 3 amazing different entrepreneurs. So we have a rum brand called Live. It's a really cool brand. The distillery for the rum is actually in Scotland. The 2 co-founders behind it is Jamaican and also from Uganda as well, and then the distillery is in Scotland. So it's a really cool story, really interesting brand, and it's, I suppose, a new, fresh, interesting take on rum. Second to this, we have a keto brand, so almost a snacks baked style product that currently has a keto focus, but we're trying to sort of stretch it to, I suppose, to make it more sort of no sugar, a bit more sort of like permissible baking and snacking. That's called No Guilt Bakes. The 2 ladies behind this are hilarious. They're so funny. They're absolutely hilarious. And every time we have a meeting with them or a session, like everyone's just in fits with laughter. So basically with that brand, we're really, I suppose, bringing out the personality of the entrepreneurs and making sure that that's really injected into the brand. And the last one, certainly not least, is a free from ice cream brand called Mama Dolce. So the entrepreneur behind that brand is like a modern day superwoman. So she was a lawyer by day, ice cream entrepreneur by night. She's absolutely amazing. And the brand itself as well is, I suppose, amazing, and it has such a bright future. Everything tastes amazing. As I said, all the entrepreneurs are just so inspirational, all in different ways as well. But yeah, we're really, really pleased with how it's going. We have held the brand review sessions, so done a deep dive into what's working, what's not working, what we need to sharpen. We've held customised brand positioning workshops for each of the different brands. We did that a couple of weeks ago. And then over the last couple of weeks, we've been holding a series of brand advisor sessions. So this is where we share the output of the positioning workshops with a range of different people. So again, it might be someone at a Diageo or a Heineken, or us, I don't know, for you know, the keto, we spoke to the founder of Bounce balls. So again, we customise that, and those sessions, the brand advisors, they're about 45 minutes. They give feedback and input into you know, what's happening, what the positioning is, but then they go on to be mentors actually for each of the different brands. And last, and it's one of my favourite bits, is we actually briefed the brands into the cabinet to get their brand and aesthetic redesigned. So that should be back in a couple of weeks' time, the first round of what that looks like. But then coming up, week after next is our first retailer check-in. So next week we're going to be working with the brands to, I suppose, create the documents to be sharing to each of the different buyers, and then we'll be getting further feedback from them as well. What I appreciate, and I'm really enjoying the most about the current cohort, is, to be honest, the entrepreneurs. They are first class, a bunch of smart women, ambitious, but they're also as well, like they're flexible in regards to, I suppose, stretching their ideas, and also, to be honest, trusting myself and Sam as well, to work with, you know, they're like babies, I suppose, and to shape them and sort of get them retailer investor ready. But honestly, just a bunch of stellar, smart women. So absolutely, it's a privilege to be working with them.